Welcome back, everybody, to the Plone Podcast episode. I don't know. I think it's actually, we won't say the number because we may be a little bit out of sequence here. But with me today is Kim Paulissen from Namur in Belgium. And are you outside of Namur?
Yeah, Leuven.
Oh, it's Leuven. My gosh. Why am I thinking Leuven? Of
Other
course.
university, same country.
The reason why is because I'm thinking you're going to be involved in the upcoming conference.
Yeah. Well, hopefully, because it is the Namur people organizing it, but obviously all Belgians will help, all of them.
I like the way you've already started blaming them and distinguishing yourself from them. Like for North Americans, I'll say for Americans, Belgium is just Belgium, right? So it's like you're somewhere in Belgium. That's like it's a country. So like we just don't know anything more precise about it than that.
Well, it's a teeny tiny country, and Namur is probably like half an hour drive from here, and you can cross Belgium in 2 hours or something. So it's a very, very small country.
How many millions of people are in Belgium then?
God, I have no clue. Like 10 million, 12?
Wow.
I'd have to Wikipedia that one, but no, it's heavily populated, like most countries in Western Europe.
So for Leuven being a Plone university, a university that uses Plone heavily, you've been there since, am I remembering, I think you said 2008?
Yeah.
Is that how you got started with Plone?
Makes me think I'm old. Yeah, we started creating a CMS for the university around 2008. I'm not saying it was a service then, because we obviously had to get things set up, but yeah, it's been going strong since then. And only growing in user base, yeah.
That's great. And how many students are at Leuven?
I think I should have prepared this. No, I think it's like 10,000 staff. And
wow.
30,000 students. I'd have to.
I could go look at this beautiful website that you have.
Yeah, obviously, because it's made in Plone with the KU Leuven house style that we also implement, not make, but implement into Plone. Earlier, before Kim and I we were chatting about the podcast and what's allowed and what's not allowed, and I want everybody to be prepared because Kim, by the way, it's kind of interesting. It's every time I talk to Kim, it's like, "Hi, Kim, it's Kim," and it's kind of a weird spy versus spy kind of thing. So like when people now talk about Kim, I go, wait a minute, I didn't do that. And they go, no, Kim Paulissen. Oh, right. So this community is not big enough for the both of us. Oh, it's good that you're a guy and I'm a girl. So at least we can differentiate on something. Because we're both Kim's heavily involved in the Plone community.
That's right. We can just burnish the reputation of Kim in the Plone community.
What if there's another Kim? That will just, not work.
So everyone who's listening or watching, just be prepared that Kim Paulissen, of course, because she swears apparently, and I have never been known to swear.
No, I had to ask because just to be sure how many times I would get beeped out or something. But I'll try to behave.
We haven't implemented a censorship function yet. Maybe we could do a kind of a plugin. I'm sure there is something like that already.
Very good. I'm sure if any of us says anything politically incorrect, we can still cut that out later.
We might as well just end the interview right now.
Okay.
What's the point if we can't say everything that we want to say?
Yeah.
So I did want to introduce everybody to Kim because you've been in the Plone community since 2008. You've been I'll ask you momentarily to describe a little bit more of your work, but you've been heavily involved in making Plone a success at KU Leuven, and you've contributed a lot of code, and you're a maintainer of quite a few add-ons. And most recently, like last week, you were at your first Plone Foundation board meeting because now you're on the board, which was fantastic for everyone who's been paying attention to the community and to what you've been doing. Your leadership in helping to, well, as I said, maintaining these add-ons and then being involved in the community. But within the Plone board, I remember back in Bucharest, at the conference in Bucharest in 2015, a number of us were talking about, okay, who can we recruit, which suckers, which volunteers can we find to be part of the Plone Foundation board? And your name was the first one that came up. I don't know if that's because they see you as a really valuable member of the community, or it's just somebody who's a sucker.
I hadn't looked at it that way. I was thinking it's just because I'm usually loud and tend to get noticed because of it. But I really don't know. I hope I'm not a sucker. But I just really, would really love to help out with the Plone community any way I can. Obviously, because I use it at work, but actually, basically, because most people on the board and in the Plone community are really nice people. So it's great that you have an excuse to go hang out with them, even if that is only virtually.
That's true. So that's why I'm not on the board anymore. They got rid of me.
We're still part of the community, so we can still hang out.
Well, there's this joke about people who make this progression in their Plone career, if you'll call it that, where they come to Plone, they discover Plone, they start using it, and they start advocating for it. They can be a developer, maybe just not necessarily a developer, and then they get known, and then they organize a conference or an event, and then they get onto the board, and then they quit. So,
oh no!
Although that part about quitting is not really true. It is a natural progression. It seems like you get to know somebody because of what they've done, either for Plone in the code base or Plone as a community or events, and then that's how they become. When people realize, oh, this is a really good person, we need to have his or her feedback and judgment on the board, because it is 20 years now Plone's been running. I'm just going to say one more thing about that, and then I'll let you talk. Which is that just yesterday I was talking to a developer in Wisconsin here who I've met before in person because, he was saying he's known about Plone and Zope for a long time, and he was going, I'm surprised Plone is still dynamic and alive. And I go, oh yeah, you should see like Plone 6 with the Volto front end. This is really exciting stuff, and the conference is happening every year. So it's a long-lived project and community. And the reason why it's long-lived and successful still is because we've got great people like you coming onto the board and who can come with new ideas and new energy. And, you look so wholesome. I was surprised when you said that you swear a lot.
Well, ask people who know me. Well, I don't swear a lot. It's just that, sometimes things don't work and I swear. Most of the time, I don't know if I am pretty behaved. I'm pretty behaved now in my older years. Yeah.
Older, please. So tell me, so you discovered Plone in 2008, and how did that come about? Like, what had you been doing leading up to that moment?
Well, it was not a really long journey. I did a graduate in IT. Graduate is like college in the States, I think. It's like a 3-year thing where I discovered HTML and CSS and fell completely in love with it because you could create something from scratch in like seconds. And that was like, wow. And then I found a job in Leuven because that's where I studied and everyone was. So I found a job there at the university at the Department of Biology, where I actually was a PHP developer.
No
swearing. See, I'm swearing already. No, I don't know when or how that became frowned upon, but it was the only thing basically available on server-side scripting. And I made some applications for the researchers there, amongst other things, and came into contact with this guy, Peter, because I had to do stuff with the FTP servers and the LAMP setup at the university. And I kept talking to him like, why are we having webmasters build everything from scratch? Is there not something like, well, I didn't know it was a CMS at the time, but something I can just put the text in and it automatically make sure it's in the house style, and people can edit stuff and they log in, and at that point really didn't know what it was. And they keep telling me, yeah, it's not possible, because we were doing PHP and HTML with Dreamweaver templates.
Oh, yeah,
I don't
sure.
know if you remember those. Yep. Something called and they had
home, I can't remember. Yeah,
the ones that made Flash later, but then before Dreamweaver. Yeah, and that was, it was okay at the time because you already had templating and it wasn't everything from scratch. But still, everyone had to take courses and learn how to use Dreamweaver and do a lot of stuff. And I kept like, I need to. If you ever have something like that, give me a call, because that's something I'd really want to do. So he said, well, it's not available. Might be an idea. Yeah, we'll see. And didn't hear anything for a couple of years. In the meantime, I had moved on to, there's a central IT service at the university. So not departmental or in a faculty or something. So I'd moved on to there doing, I want to say I'm going to swear again, but it's not swearing, only to some. I did Windows help desk stuff. Mm-hmm. So that's completely different stack. But it was nice to be around people. And there, somewhere through the grapevine, I heard there's talk about creating that CMS thing at the university. So I said, hey, not on my watch here. Uh-huh. Or basically, yes, but only on my watch. So I basically was really happy that I heard about it. And some morning I just grabbed the boss lady and said, I want to be part of that team. That's what I want to do. Not really, because basically I just asked really friendly in the morning and really shy, I heard that you were doing that. Could I please be considered for that? Because I did like web development before, you know? And the whole position was actually written around, are you capable of doing PHP and want to help the university? We want you. And I said, okay, I can do PHP. This is wonderful. Fine. Little did I know that like the months or years before, Peter, that guy I'd been calling with, and another Peter, because there were two Peters on the team, had already decided what system they were going to use. So luckily I was chosen for the job. I don't know why, but I could then start creating that CMS. And they sat me down and they said, okay, Kim, I know you do like PHP, but from now on, you are a Python developer. Like, okay.
So it's like, you're now a Python developer. Yeah.
Like,
it's like that. Imagine, no training required.
Yeah. If it were only that easy. Yeah. So no way in hell. But it was a completely new team. And there were two main developers, which was me and Julia. So we have a full female development team to get all that going, and the two Peters to handle all the backend basement stuff. So it's all fine. And I think the reason they chose is because we were both PHP developers from the decentralized services, having very much felt the pain of all the developers there. And so it was very good that we could now start implementing all this stuff that we were doing, but then inside a CMS or a big framework. And then we started just starting from scratch, making everything in Plone, which was very difficult at the time because, it was, 2008, like Plone was still on. Well, we did do Plone 3 to begin with. We didn't start with Plone 2. Yeah. So we already had a lot, but we had to do like a service setup for the entire university. And that's where the complexity usually lies. It's making one site in Plone, obviously, but making it as a service was something none of us had ever done before. But it worked. And I think in about a year, we had everything set up and we just gave it to people and said, there are no, you can just join the service for free if you want to. the university now provides you a CMS, no more Dreamweaver templates. Mm-hmm. And I think the good thing we did was, with no questions asked, if there is a new house style, it will magically appear on your website.
Oh, yeah.
Whenever you want. Luckily, the house style doesn't change that much. But I think that was a huge selling point, because if not, everyone had to do that whole thing with the Dreamweaver templates and redo everything. And now they could basically just add content and everything else was done for them. You could log in, you could edit, you could share, give permissions to other people in your faculty, do all the stuff that content management systems do that are no way possible in Dreamweaver setups or pure HTML setups, at least not at the time.
So now I'm really curious, because as you may recall, I worked at the university here in Oshkosh, and we were doing the same thing. But I remember some of the difficulties we had in terms of making that promise actually take place. So if you had a version of, so did you standardize on one version of Plone?
I think one Zope cluster per big group of stuff. So you have like the biomedical, the sciences, the medical stuff, and then all the centralized services have different setups. So I think we have about 8 different Zope clusters, and each Zope cluster contains, give or take, it depends on the thing, but from 10 to 30 Plone sites. But every Plone site, a Plone site in our case, is a faculty. So any Plone site also holds all the subsites for smaller departments, research groups, labs, communication offices, and everything else inside. So it is, well, I can't even speak in terms of websites, because every Plone website contains sometimes up to 800 smaller websites.
Whoa, 800, my gosh.
Well, I'm talking folders here, because we have like a subsite thing inside Plone sites.
Yeah. Did you use Lineage, or did you just make your own sort of sub?
We made our own. Lineage was not mature at the time, or not compatible with the house style. It's hard to remember, because over the last plus 10 years, the house style and other things have changed so much, and we had to refactor everything multiple times. But Lineage was at the time not possible, so we just made a little subsite thing, and it didn't really do much of anything except change the navigation.
Right. Yeah, I remember. Yeah. That was my story about the it's gonna sound terrible. That's my story about the urinal encounter at the Washington DC conference, where I had Calvin, I think Kurt Bendel, Martin Espelli. Yeah, I had anyway. That's a previous podcast edition, but that's where I was trying to get Calvin to tell me when he was going to release that patch, because he had a patch that was going to be the thing that was needed for Lineage to work. And that was at the DC conference. So at the end of October of 2008. So it was right around the same time, I think. But that exactly was the kind of installation that we had at the university in Oshkosh. Multiple Zope clusters, lots of different sites. And we didn't use subsites as much. We had still somewhere between 30 and I'm scared to say this, 100 sites running in each Zope cluster. And that was a challenge, which is to make those theme changes, distribute them within all those different sites, given that, unfortunately for us, we were trying to be very flexible with different departments, and we allowed them to have their own theme. So it's we kind of shot ourselves in the foot by giving them a little bit too much flexibility.
We're sort of experiencing that issue now that we're migrating to Plone 5. That's nice that they could do all that, but that will not migrate. And at the time, we were actually very lucky that we had one theme. Well, at least one global theme and one setup. So there's one setup, one code base, one theme, and that's distributed across all of it. So except for some site settings and some custom CSS on sites, we made the decision to keep everything the same, because if not, we're a 2-developer team. There's no way you can maintain that with.
That's astounding.
Yeah.
Is that still the size of the team?
well, I'm saying 2 developer. Obviously, there's 2 people working on the back end, so it's a 4-person team. Yeah. Now we went to 5, and the other one was like developer DevOps in between, and it's a completely new teams. And now we have 2 new developers, Thibaut and Michael. So they are since about a year now. In the middle of COVID, in the lockdown, we had 2 new juniors join, and we have a new. One new DevOpser. We're still looking for a second one. So anyone?
Oh yeah. Well, we're looking for people.
DevOps at the KU Leuven. Putting Plone on Docker and such. Yeah.
That was a really good. Did you join that training, the Plone deployment training by Erico at the conference?
No, I wanted to, but weekends are a bit troublesome with family and.
Oh yeah. Oh, family. I mean, who needs family?
Right? All that. Always.
You have a Plone family. Why do you need another family? You already had one.
Well, I live with one. That makes it very nice, actually.
So, if maybe like we can, I'll show you the Plone deployment training. I thought it was wonderful because the whole Docker deployment story is just, it's so much cleaner. Yeah. And pip install is really nice because you don't have to run build out and worry that you're doing like a Russian roulette kind of thing.
But it's Plone 6 only, right? The pip install.
Yes, Plone 6. Yeah.
But
it's backwards compatible.
Yeah. We will test it because that's the new DevOps guy is Bruno, and he is the last year has been putting our Plone setup onto Docker, but then Docker on Nomad and all the specific stuff that the KU Leuven has. So it's not Docker and Docker Compose, it's Podman and Nomad and HashiCorp stuff. Yeah.
Okay.
But I already told him about actually I just mailed it to him again because I saw all the nice stuff happening on the Plone backend repo, which has all the Docker setup and all the stuff that we have been discussing the past months, like permission issues and chown and getting your data somewhere else. That's all coming back in the stuff I see from GitHub from the Plone backend repository. So we will definitely.
That's cool that you're able to keep up on top of that, because I mean, just the number of GitHub notifications I got, I had to turn them off. There was just too much.
Yeah, I unfollow a lot, just the ones, the add-ons that we use, and these ones I keep following because I'm the only senior developer left, so I have to sort of be able to help Bruno in some way when it comes to backend stuff. Wow.
Oh, that's very cool. It's great to hear that all this is still happening, and it is an exciting time for Plone. Version 6 is exciting. Well, I was looking forward to Plone 6 just because of the Volto front end, but the Docker deployment story is just, I think that's going to change a lot. That's going to make it a lot easier for even especially for large scale developments or deployments where you want to have an easy way to spin up as many containers as you need. It's like, wow, this is brilliant.
Yeah.
Almost, very much on demand.
Yeah.
So tell me some more about when we talk about Plone being a family, and about being your only family, really. Tell me some more about the people that you've worked with, because you've worked with Godefroy, right? So Godefroy Godefroy Chapelle is a long time name in the Zope and Plone communities.
Yeah,
but you've worked with others too.
Yeah, he's our Zope dinosaur. It's a fond name. It's a compliment. No, but we've worked with Godefroy Chapelle, or Gotcha, as some of you know him. Well, I think since the beginning, because obviously at the beginning we did not know what we were doing, so we got Plone Consultancy. And at the time it was Godefroy, and still is, but also all the people from Affinitique, which is also a Belgium-based company doing Plone, as a company, so for clients creating applications on top of Plone and Zope. And that's, I think, Jean-François Roche and Laurent and Martin from Affinitique. Those are the names I know. There's many more there. And they were also our consultants to start with. So they actually taught us a lot about best practices like release management, dependency management, testing, doing, I don't know if we had pull requests and Git at the time, but being part of the community. So if something was broken, to let that know and to maybe even fix it yourself. So all that stuff was something that they taught us, and we sort of still live by now and are trying to teach the younger generation, which makes it, well, it's sort of the, I want to say gateway drug, but that's the wrong word. Getting into the Plone community or in any open source community. It's just like you see something's wrong. And I noticed that in younger generations or developers that are starting out, it's kind of a big gap or bridge to get over to say, like, I noticed something's wrong. Now I'm going to tell those big guys who made that CMS that they made a mistake. And they're like, I can't do that. But it's like, yes, you should. Because often it's like little things and you can just contribute and make a pull request or just make an issue on GitHub and say, well, I found this. Is this okay? Or is it wrong? Can I fix it? Or can someone fix it? It doesn't even matter. But it's a way to become part of the community. And if you do even a couple of them, it's like you said, you get to know people, or you get into communications with a lot of people only virtually. But then when you finally get a chance to meet, it's so much easier because you sort of know, like, oh, that's that guy or girl, because you sometimes don't even know I've been communicating with. So that's a very nice thing.
Yeah, I remember feeling that way myself, wondering if I saw like a typo in some documentation or some wording that was kind of awkward, to feel like it's okay to, in fact, it's not just okay, it's really welcome if you file an issue. And it's even, people are even more appreciative if you not just file the issue, but you propose a fix. And it seems like it is a hard step to take, because you're worried that you don't measure up to maybe the quality of what's been put out there. And to think maybe that you're even in the same league as the people who've created that piece of software or the documentation that goes with it, may seem like it's the imposter syndrome. But really, that's what an open source community is all about. And it's how open source continues to develop and get good and improve. New features come out because people have an idea. And it's not enough to just have the idea, but if you tell somebody your idea, they might have had the same idea, or they might build on your idea, and suddenly everything gets better. So that is definitely one of the things that I found about the Plone community, that we've made an explicit, we've been explicit about trying to be helpful and saying that we welcome these kinds of contributions. And it seems like we have been able to, fortunately, had, I would say, multiple generations now of developers who continue to join in and contribute and make things better. And it's partly because people like you are acting as ambassadors, and you're making Plone, you're a face of Plone that is welcoming and enthusiastic. And, you've been there, and you've been the developer who didn't know Plone and suddenly got involved and met these people. And now you're part of the in crowd. But you're still reaching out to other people and making sure that they understand that they one day could just as well be part of the in crowd.
Yeah, I hope so, because that's what, amongst others, Godefroy taught us, and that I am now trying to pass on to every other developer we have. But it is really, it's a fun thing to be able to help, and it's what makes an open source community, because it's not just our community, it's the entire open source movement that works that way. The only thing I sometimes wish is, because we are helpful and everyone tries to help, and the obvious issue with that is it's open source. No one really gets paid for this. Everyone is doing this after their hours or in their own time. And that's one of the things, we should fix in the future, like globally in the world, like, I know, world peace and all, to like have people contribute to open source projects more, because if people aren't contributing on their own time, nothing gets done.
But I'm guilty as anybody else. I file Plone improvement proposals, and I go, it'd be nice if somebody implemented this, and everyone assumes
I'm not going to today.
I'm not qualified, but I have this idea.
But it's good, because sometimes those ideas do get implemented, and it's usually comes from a need that you have inside your service or inside Plone. And that's what we had, well, mostly Godefroy, but I think in the beginning also Jeff do. Like he was our consultant, and we did like this huge Plone 3 to 4 migration like years ago. And then we were like at the cutting edge, and I did a whole presentation on like the 25 most important bugs we found in Plone migrating 3 to 4. And Godefroy had to like debug every one of them and fix thousands of things in the Plone packages. But it's nice. So we had to do migration, and along that we hopefully helped more people migrate to Plone 4 after he did all those fixes. And he still does most of that work. Like when I'm not qualified, especially before I was not qualified to do like core Plone development, we just have him do it because he always finds a way. But then he improves Plone, the product. Yeah.
I think I'm sure over the years I've met him at different conferences, but the one thing that's sticking in my mind is in Tokyo, we're at the sprints.
Yeah.
Were you in Tokyo?
No, I heard all the nice stories.
Well, you won't have heard this one. So the sprints were taking place in a Microsoft tower. And I don't know, it was like a 20, 30 story tower right in downtown Tokyo. And we're taking a break, and we went there were 4 corners of the building where you had these spectacular views of downtown. And Godefroy and I just happened to be standing there looking at the view, and I was taking photos. And he started on I think it was something about cryptocurrency, and I was like, "Wow!" It became this.
Oh no!
amazing,
Don't mention the war, Kim.
You mean I shouldn't have encouraged them?
I'm just gonna say, and I'm sorry, Godefroy, if you heard this, but we told the new developers, like, if you want to have a quiet lunch, do not mention the Bitcoin to Godefroy. But it is very interesting. If you want to hear more about cryptocurrency and Bitcoin, then you can go for days, I'm quite sure.
So something I want to always ask people I meet on the podcast here is, tell me, you must have a number of funny stories, like preferably seedy stories that you'd like to share, that you'd like to get off your chest and tell people who are listening or watching some of the funny things that you've seen over the years in Plone, like some of the weird things that happened at Plone conferences, because that's usually where they happen, at the conferences, because online there's only so much trouble you can get into.
Yeah, that's true. I thought about this and I saw it in the list, but I actually sometimes I am just very well behaved, and I did not get drunk and find myself somewhere at strange places in any of the conferences.
Okay, well, that's all right, and we'll go with the idea that you are truly wholesome, and there's swearing is as bad as it gets.
Maybe not that. I do remember that I usually am at conferences alone, because for some reason the others couldn't join. It was like when they had kids or I don't know what. But I do remember that every conference I had to be like this I felt like a little girl alone outside in the world. And I remember that every time I just had to be social, because I had to get from the hotel to like the conference location or the conference party. And I know that every time I had to just pull someone's arm, like, I don't know you, but you're Plone community, so you're walking me to my hotel later because I'm not going alone. And it was a very nice way to just start conversations with people, because I met a lot of people like, okay, we're I need to find someone to get home safely. It's like almost like picking up people at a bar, but then it was all friendly and behaved. Just needed to get home safe. But it made for some very interesting conversations on the way there, because you always like, you're speaking a non-English language. You were a Plone community. Hey, are you a Plone community? Yes. Okay. So I got to know, like, that I could even speak in Dutch, because I got to know the people from 4 Digits and SES and yeah, like, and the Spanish community. So I met lots of people from the whole Plone community just by walking home with them at several conferences.
Yeah, oddly enough, you can sort of spot the Plone people at different conferences. Like, especially the hotels, the backpacks, the typing on the laptop.
Yeah. I grabbed Philip Bauer at that point once because I was in Italy and I was like, that guy I know. Like some people are like you say, the face of Plone is like, I don't know him, but I'm going with them to whatever place we're going to.
And that's right. In Ferrara, I stayed at the Trainer Hotel, which is right next to the castle. So there was always a group of us who were just wandering through these little alleyways to get to the cinema, which was an interesting venue in itself. Yeah. So you must have been staying. Were you staying right in the downtown also?
Yeah, next door to Philip in the Trainer Hotel, because that year I was giving the training. Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Master training with Philip. Yeah. Thanks, Philip. By the way, that was really nice to have that opportunity. Yeah.
That the whole thing about including training as part of the conference, I think was brilliant, because it just opened it up so that everybody could benefit from it. I think that's probably one of the best things that we've done in terms of the format for the conference. Yeah. And it seems like we've stuck with it. I think we started in 2015 with that, and it just seemed to be so much more successful than trying to charge people separate fees for the training.
It's also good to convince management, because you get like a very good training at the beginning of your conference. And the good thing is that it's before, because I followed a lot of the trainings in the past. And you sort of get to be in a room and debug with other Plonistas. And you see that everyone's struggling to get like a build out running, or whatever the error is at that point in time. And everyone's like, where are you? So you get to know a lot of people from everywhere inside that training. So you already have like a little group to go to during the conference days, if you're like lost in the hallways, like if you're alone often. So.
Yeah, that the Bucharest conference was the first. I remember distinctly sitting in the theming class, and there are several people that I got to know from beating myself up over a day and a half trying to get everything working and trying to keep up with the instructors. It is sort of it's like a particularly good start to connections within the Plone community. And the sprints are like that too, where if you sit down with somebody, you've got that itch you want to scratch, and you find somebody who's got the same kind of desire to fix a thing or improve a thing, then that's just such a nice connection that you can make. And nowadays, it seems like with COVID, those kinds of sprints have had to slow down. Obviously, they're all remote, except for the fan zone in Sorrento, which sounds like it was a wonderful thing to be at.
So, I was so sad that I couldn't come. My husband was out of the country too, and I was like, oh, all the people I want to see are there, and I want to start sprinting and fixing things, and actually get my hands onto Volto. But it seemed, I saw the video on a lot of the conference talks and the visuals there, and it got up so many memories, because I went there the year of Ferrara. I was also in Sorrento, the open garden sprint.
Oh, good. Yeah.
Yeah. I remember management was a bit apprehensive is the word, I think, because I showed them, I want to go to this. It's a Plone strategic sprint, and they do nothing but sprints, and they have trainings, and it was the Python 3 migration. So I really wanted to learn more about Plone 5, Python 3 stuff. So I sent them the website, and all they saw was, to put it bluntly, a bunch of nerds, but in a very idealistic setting at the Italian coast side with fancy swimming pools and cocktails. And they were like, Kim, what is this thing? This is not a real thing, right? And I was like, oh, yes, it's a real thing. It's a bunch of nerds who actually voluntarily program all day next to a beautiful pool and don't go into the pool.
That's right.
We don't go visit the countries. Well, we do visit the coast and the bars later in the evenings, but full day programming voluntarily. Yeah.
It is pretty much, it's very intense. It's one of these things I've gotten to accept, which is that if I go to a conference if I've been lucky to go to Plog twice, and each time it's like you work from morning, like you stop for meals, right? But even then you're talking about something to do with Plone. And then you work all day, and then it's really on the last day of Plog that it seems that's when traditionally people go, all right, I've worked my butt off the entire week, and now I want to actually see something of the city or the surrounding area. So that's the traditional one day that people take to visit. But yeah, otherwise, yeah, you're right. You sit next to the pool deck, but you're not in the pool. You're working.
Yeah. Well, you can enjoy the sun and the cocktails, but not too much cocktails during the day. But every time you stop programming, you just sit back and go talk to someone. And it's usually because it's people who've been in the community a bit longer. Sometimes you can actually have your strategic discussions or discuss an issue or an idea you're having. So it's very nice, nice place to be and nice place to hang out with the other Plonistas. So I would recommend it to anyone. Next time, Fan Zone. Is it this year that it was called Fan Zone?
Yeah, it's called Fan Zone because usually Plug is in April, right around, just after Easter. And so they didn't want to confuse anybody with it. So I don't know. So they came up with
the Plug move,
because the Fan Zone was meant also to be sort of an in-person gathering for people who were going to attend the Plone conference, which was online. So it was a nice hybrid thing. So that's actually not a bad way to consider how a hybrid event could take place. But hopefully, a year from now, we're going to have an in-person conference. And what's cool is that you've gone to so many events, kind of what worked and what didn't work so well. And so, we're just looking to you to make an even better experience.
Oh dear, no pressure here. Make a better experience from Sorrento. Yeah, right. For the conference.
Have to spiff up the venue a little bit.
We'll talk to the Namur people. We'll make the Belgian conference great.
So I'm just going to ask you just a couple of things about the future of Plone. Tell me more about what happened in your first board meeting, if you can. I mean, I know there's some deep secrets that are kept on the Plone board.
Yeah, I learned the deep secrets are called executive sessions. And I learned that we operate by something called Robert's Rule.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So motioning and seconding and saying aye, things like that. But I don't remember which things I'm allowed to say or not to say, but there's nothing major. The future of Plone hasn't been discussed yet on the board, or the future of Plone for 2022 has not been officially discussed on the board.
and I guess for anybody who's listening who isn't familiar with the way the board functions, the Plone board really does not direct any of the software. So in fact, none of the developments in the software or feature developments or feature planning are part of the board's function at all. Legally, in fact, the board is not allowed to direct the software.
That is the direction of the software is done by the open source community. And anyone contributing to Plone. But we do have liaisons to the different teams, and you have Plone is part of, consists, among other things, about a bunch of different teams, each contributing to their own specialities, like the framework team, the security team, documentation team, training team. So the board does a marketing team, many more. And the board sort of, my boss, not my boss, Peter, he said it's more of a administrative job. So it keeps an eye on what's happening in the community and takes more does the legal stuff and the administrative stuff, as far as I can see now. Because as you said, I've only been to one meeting, and I get the meeting reports from before being Plone Foundation member. But so
you got taught the secret handshake, right?
No. See.
Okay, there's more secrets coming up then.
Yeah.
But in terms of the teams, so you've been working on the documentation team. So tell me some more about what drove you to pick the documentation team in particular, and what have you been doing with them?
Well, not really that much so far, because I volunteered to be on the documentation team when Sven did his talk in, was it Ferrara? I think Ferrara. Yeah, that they were moving the whole documentation stuff from RST to Markdown and putting it onto Docker. And I said, yeah, I want to be a part of that. See, every time I hear something like, that's a good idea, I just go there like, yeah, here am I, that's good, working with you there. And that just, oh, people are going to hate me for saying this, but I know that RST and Sphinx are wonderful for writing documentation, but sometimes with documentation, you just want anyone to be able to contribute with the least amount of effort. Mm-hmm. And for that, at this point in time, according to me, Markdown is just way easier and enough for about 90% of what you need for a documentation. I'm not saying, obviously, technical documentation can have a bunch of stuff that can be done better, and RST has all the fancy stuff for it. But I did a talk on that. The Mist thing handles that. So watch my talk if you want to know more about that. And I just thought, if you move to Markdown, then it will make things easier for all contributors, mm-hmm. whether they be from a Python or a JS or other background. It's supported by GitHub, and I just wanted to that's what I would like to help work on. And the other part is that I actually just like writing documentation. So that's just, I am
wow, that's crazy.
Yeah, I know. We actually have because there's a whole creating content section on the Plone documentation for the editors, like how do I create a page and how do I edit the content of a page and all those kinds of things. And we made our full manual for the KU Leuven editors with screenshots in the KU Leuven setup for everything you can do in the KU Leuven Plone setup. So not just how do I create a page, but how do I add the metadata for this, or how do I add this house style element, or how do I add, and I wrote that in, well, not just me, but I wrote a big section of that. And I also did all the trainings for when we started Plone. Mm. Now the training people do that. Thank you very much for that, because they really do an awesome job now. But in the beginning, I did all the trainings and had to write all the workshops and the documentation, and I just love doing that, because it's part of the developer thing. You like structuring things and putting things in order. So the little OCD autism thing they say developers have, it's very high on the scale with me.
Never heard of that. Never heard of it. But you're absolutely right. It's very satisfying to be able to convey to somebody how to do a thing. And then it's really satisfying to see them catch on and understand it and then go off and do it. The training and the documentation that we have on plone.org, for docs.plone.org, and the training.plone.org, those are wonderful resources that I've used at a number of different places as the basis for very customized documentation for a particular project or a particular client. And it's great that we have that to start with. Yeah. Documentation is so important to a project. To an open source project in particular, because that's how you draw people in. It's how you convey how easy it is to do a thing. So thank you for jumping in on the documentation team and making that get better.
I haven't done that much yet, but I am slowly merging all the pull requests and fixing broken links and adding little bits of documentation. But now with the Plone 6, there's so much that's going to happen. So I hope that I can help merge that all together with Sven, because there's a lot of work still to be done. But we all have great plans. Now to the implementation and the time.
Do you plan on using Volto yourself in the short term?
At the university, unfortunately, not yet in the short term. Because we're sort of, well, not finishing up, but finishing up the code migration for Plone 5, which means that we have the content migration to go and the planning with all the departments and faculties when they can get their test setups, and then when they have the test setups, do all the feedback, and then do the actual Plone 5 migration for everyone. And we still have some work left, so the next year, probably no. but I will try in the sidelines, because the whole, because for me it's sometimes confusing now, because you have Plone, the headless CMS, and Volto, the front end CMS, because they're both sort of CMSs, and I'm a fan of the Jamstack. I'm sorry if that's bad.
That's right. I saw you post that this morning. Yeah.
Yeah, and I would just really like to see how Volto fits into the Jamstack world, how you can use Plone as a headless CMS to be a backend for different Jamstack front ends. And what I really love is that unrelated, but the Volto way of creating components it's so modular and flexible that I really want to start figuring out how we could use that. Like, because basically they're React components, and no matter how different your setup is from a normal Plone, you can just reuse every React component or very easily customize an existing one to use your own, for example, house style elements. Like you have accordions or slideshows, but sometimes your house style has different ones. So I think Volto opens up a whole lot of possibilities, and it makes it much more accessible to the new developers or the current developers who you can just say, like, make this little component and try. And since it's pretty well documented and it follows all the guidelines in the JS development world, those are actually very modular tasks you can give them. And that, I think we're going to see a lot of customization in that will make it very flexible to use in the future.
I know that's been part of the dream for Victor and Timo when they started putting together Volto, that it would open up content management development that was traditionally Python and a lot of older technologies. It would open it up to developers who were just familiar with JavaScript and React, and I think that's the promise of Plone's future. Yeah,
exactly. And there's a lot to be done still, but I think we've already. For those of you who haven't watched Timo's keynote from this year's conference, because he sort of explains a big part of how they came to that decision and where it's going. I thought that was very interesting to see where the plans for Volto are and how that will work.
So Kim, before we close off our podcast, did you have anything that you wanted to say to Plone community, anybody who's watching or listening, that you've been waiting for that opportunity to say that you haven't said yet, like any swear words you want to roll out?
No. What do I want to say? You're putting me on the spot here. For one, I don't actually know if anyone had to vote this year, but I want to say thank you for allowing me to be part of the Plone Board of Directors. And I also want to say to everyone I've ever met and will still meet, I've missed you, and I really hope that we will get to see each other in Belgium at the next conference, because it's been too long. And that's about it.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Kim Paulissen from KU Leuven. I really appreciate your taking the time out today to talk to me and share some of your stories and your background and your dreams for Plone. So I hope we'll catch you again soon for another podcast interview, or certainly in Belgium next year. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Kim.